Hi, I'm Kamali and welcome to Newsfeed from my apartment. Here's a look at some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world. Will this influential and unelected man be forced out of his job at the top of British politics? We make it clear just how useful the World Health Organization really is, and it's Africa Day 2020. And top of our newsfeed, Dominic Cummings, the top advisor to the British Prime Minister, is under pressure from both traditional and social media to quit his job after he was caught breaking the lockdown rules. Now, will he stay or will he go? That is not clear, but what is clear is the anger against Dominic Cummings is not going anywhere.
This man is the focus of fury from all across the UK. His job is on the line, but for now his boss is standing by him. And that's no other than Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Johnson's chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, has caused an uproar by flouting the UK's coronavirus lockdown. He travelled more than 400 kilometres to his parents' home with his wife and son at the end of March. He says he did so because his wife had coronavirus symptoms, and they wanted to be near their parents so childcare could be covered for their 4-year-old.
As far as I can see, he stuck to the rules and he acted legally and responsibly.
While the Prime Minister and some others have bought Cummings' story, at least one person at the UK Civil Service is not impressed. This tweet went viral for the 10 minutes it was on the official account. It was liked by more than 30,000 Twitter users before it was deleted. And the BBC even read it out.
Someone's posted that those comments were arrogant and offensive. Can you imagine having to work with these truth twisters?
Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling has offered to pay the civil servants wages for a year if the person gets fired.
You must stay at home. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home nation.
Protesters outside Cummings' house made it clear they weren't impressed. Even his neighbours got involved. Cummings was behind Johnson's successful election strategy and was also one of the main architects of the Brexit campaign with its slogan of "Take Back Control." But with Labour leader Keir Starmer and even some members of Johnson's Conservative Party calling for his head, it might not be too long before Cummings finds himself in the political wilderness.
All right, let's take a look at some COVID-19 related stories that you may have missed. This is the Mayor of Toronto, John Tory, wearing a face mask as a neck protector while at a city park over the weekend. Tory has had to apologise for doing this, as when pictures of it were seen by some on social media, they were angry and they accused him of setting a bad example. His sorry says he is disappointed in himself. Well, this is the winning goal of the inaugural Euro 2020 Championship. Italy won what UEFA said was the national team esports football tournament of the year. The gamers played on Pro Evolution Soccer 2020 on PlayStation 4. The actual championships have been postponed until 2021, but this digital version represents the beginning of a new era for competitive football sim events. The winner won €100,000. And next, the World Health Organization. The WHO has been talked about on news bulletins and around kitchen tables since this pandemic began. It's become perhaps the most famous of all UN departments, but some work by the President of America to undermine it is leading some others around the world to question what the WHO is really for.
Coronavirus came to the world's attention in late December last year. The World Health Organization was quickly on the case, reacting through its social media accounts, but it took months before WHO announced a pandemic.
And we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
The World Health Organization began monitoring coronavirus in early January, and on the 11th of March, after the declaration of the pandemic, it was the only news story being told.
You can say within the UN system, the WHO is the only specialized agency that focuses on global public health. It's actually even one of the oldest agencies. It's been around now for more than 70 years, and it really does a lot of things. It advocates for universal healthcare, monitor public health risks, set standards and guidelines. That's a quite important function.
But now doubts have surfaced about WHO's relevance. Its decision-making has been questioned, and its public statements made about China rebuffed.
Today I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted to assess the World Health Organization's role in severely mismanaging and covering up the spread of the coronavirus.
The United States contributed 15% of the WHO's 2018-2019 budget at more than $400 million. Cutting these funds would be damaging but not disastrous. And other nations have already made it clear that they will make up any shortfall.
WHO is critical in looking at early warning, right, when it comes to pandemic. So less money will actually turn against even those countries who may want to rely on WHO capability when it comes to pandemic preparedness, for instance.
As the US reduces its presence in the WHO, China's grows. At the 73rd World Health Assembly, China's President Xi Jinping pledged $2 billion for the fight against COVID-19.
When you look into low-income countries or even some middle-income countries, the WHO is doing a quite vital work of expanding healthcare.
The proxy war between the US and China will harm the WHO's credibility to such an extent it could be the ultimate casualty of the coronavirus pandemic.
Well, we spoke to Christian Lindmeier from the World Health Organization and asked him to explain what the WHO does outside of all its work around COVID-19.
Right now it looks as if WHO is only doing COVID-19 and nothing else. In fact, the World Health Organization takes care of nearly all the diseases that are possible in the world, from communicable diseases, meaning those who can be transmitted easily by whatever means, be it malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, and anything like it, measles very typically, but also many of the non-communicable diseases, so those who don't normally get transmitted, cancers, diabetes, autism, hearing problems. So literally from A to Z, all possible health issues do get dealt with by WHO. We have over 150 country offices in the world where our people deal directly with the ministries of health. Withholding or withdrawing about 20% of the budget, which the US, for example, is right now giving, is certainly a big issue for any organization. So this would have definitely a large impact. It would have an impact on all sorts of programs, not only COVID-19, but also on polio and on malaria, on TB, whatever you want to name, and would definitely have an impact. At the same time, it was very, very important to see last week at the World Health Assembly the outpouring support by nearly all member states. We need all 194 member states to fight together against any disease, but more so now against this coronavirus or against COVID-19 as there is. For the COVID-19 response, I'm fairly positive because members have been really outpouring with support and there's a lot of international attention on it. Yet, this is an organization which is dealing with public health. Politics should not be part of it. The Director General said a while ago, this virus will kind of show us the weaknesses in our societies. It will show us the gaps in our systems, and let's just hope that these gaps will not be in the funding towards a very vital and necessary COVID-19 response.
Okay, let's keep things moving around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Monday. Well, SpaceX held a successful rehearsal of their upcoming historical mission to be the first commercial company to send humans to the International Space Station. SpaceX is owned by Elon Musk, so if this is successful, it will be a huge moment for his bank account too. Two veteran NASA astronauts, Douglas Hurley and Robert Behnken, will be aboard the Dragon capsule, which launches on a Falcon 9 rocket from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on the 27th of May. Now, some people are paying for Netflix and have not watched anything on it for more than a year. Netflix say they will now send notifications to these people telling them they are paying for something they are not using and that their account is about to be deactivated. Well, it's Africa Day 2020, an event which began in 1963, organised by the Organisation of African Unity. And it's a chance to celebrate what we don't know about the continent, the cradle of humanity. Here's Adama.
Africa is the second largest continent and home to more than 1 billion people. Its landmass is the same as China, the US, Western Europe, and Japan combined. Generally, African countries have warm climates, but in some, the weather can turn icy. The coldest temperature reported on the continent was -23 degrees Celsius in Morocco's Middle Atlas Mountains. Diversity doesn't end at climate, though. There are around 3,000 ethnic groups in Africa and 2,000 languages. Arabic, English, Swahili, and French are the most commonly spoken. Oral traditions are still strong, and 40% of people can't read or write. And yet, it's home to some of the world's oldest universities. According to UNESCO and the Guinness World Records, the oldest tertiary institution to grant degrees is Al Qura'in in Fez, Morocco. Historians have branded Mali's city of Timbuktu as the Paris of medieval times. Its university dates back to 982 CE, way before Oxford and Cambridge were built. Jeff Bezos may be on his way to being a trillionaire, the richest person on earth. But for now, that title belongs to a 14th century king, Mansa Musa of the Malian Empire. His fortune is estimated at $400 billion at today's rates. Other economic historians say his wealth was so vast, it's impossible to calculate. The African population is the world's youngest, with 200 million people aged between 15 and 24. The United Nations anticipates that by 2030, young people will make up 42% of the continent. It's also home to some of the most gender-equal governments. 3 of the world's top 10 countries with the most women in parliament are in Africa. It's also home to some of the most gender-equal governments. 3 of the world's top 10 countries with the most women in parliament are in Africa. They will face many challenges, including infrastructure development, handling the climate crisis, and harnessing the benefits of the digital revolution. And then there's healthcare. While African countries suffer from underdeveloped healthcare systems in comparison to other nations, as the world battles COVID-19, Senegal and Ghana are emerging as success stories. Senegal's response strategy began in January. In a country of 16 million people, it's reported a few dozen deaths. Ghana has 30 million people and has a similar low death toll. It's had great success with pool testing and community healthcare initiatives.
And last up, here's some video of some surfers in Australia making the very most of a storm. Now, the strong winds did lead to some property damage and loss of power for some people for a while, but for these surfers, it was an opportunity to get into the water and take on some 10-meter waves. These images were filmed in Perth. Okay, that's it from us. Thank you very much for watching. Stay home and stay safe if you can. If you want to get in contact, you'll find me at Kamali Melbourne on Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching. See you again tomorrow.